DC51 The Gnomes' Christmas Gift. Soul-touching and life-enhancing stories. The Gnomes' Christmas Gift, a Christmas story. Many months before Christmas, Santa in his sleigh, pulled by his reindeer, was on his way to Gnome Planet to attend a meeting with the Gnome elders. The elders had carefully chosen many youngsters from different gnome clans that would assist Santa with Christmas gifts ideas and assisting him with bringing these gifts to a particular planet in the Shadow Galaxy, called by Santa Gnome Planet, a planet inhabited by the Gnomebians. The entire idea of having the gnomes involved had started out with Santa having a disturbing dream in regards to Gnome Planet, in the past known as Transition Planet, and the inhabitants called the Channels that had been in the transition process to become conscious channel beings. However, they had failed and stayed reactive channel doers and unconscious self-created repetitive numb channels. But even worse, became the consumers of life, and by doing so, consumed most of the planet and the health of themselves. Driven by worldly power, money and success, no matter what the cost would be, they were on a dead-end, purposeless path. In this process of producing and consuming, they had become numb, because of the endless repetitions of routines, habits, and addictions, that all end up, like prolonging any sensation, in numbness, followed by seeking another sensation. The underlying cause of all this was that they felt that there was something missing, or something they had lost, something that was conscious, but now unconscious. Instead of looking for that, they started to fill up this emptiness and kept busy filling everything up and occupying everything. This all became about consuming and the destruction of the planet, and they themselves were now in the last chapter before extinction would take place. In his mind he looked at the life of the Gnomebians and the different groups that had received names like the Takers, the Fakers, the Digital Heads, the Parrots, the Pack Rats, the Hamsters, the Vultures, the Viewers, the Followers, the Gamers, the Pigs, the Trade Rats, the Power Hands, the Busy Bees, the Masked Faces, and many more. Each second of daily living was packed with activities, entertainment, social media, shopping, celebrations, busy with becoming rich, looking polished, wanting to be looked up to, having children and pets, and endless other activities to be occupied by. Their homes were storage spaces. Every wall, counter space or space had something hanging or standing, and the garages were completely packed with collected items they mostly never used. Their bodies and minds were overstimulated, and there seemed to be no moment of active rest or silence. The sense of hearing was occupied with noises and voices. The eyes were always watching something, their hands and fingers busy, and the mouth busy talking or having something inside of it. And in conjunction, everything and everybody was instantly judged. Almost everybody was confronted with signs, symptoms, and diseases, and doctors' offices, clinics, and hospitals were overcrowded. The movies they watched had every sense organ stimulated and was a mirror of their life, busy with it all and having it all. They tried to be in control, busy doing and feeling safe, which was also connected to a deep fear inside. This was their life from the moment they woke up until the moment they crashed down in bed or with the help of tranquilizers. Their faith had also changed into a complete circus of rituals and entertainments and loud music. There was no moment of peace or silence. Although everything on the planet seemed to be in motion, but a frantic motion, it was actually a numb world with numb individuals, robots driven by artificial stimulations, electrical and digital impulses. However, Santa still lived with hope that things could change around, that they could become conscious channel beings with the quality of being aware of the consequence of each thought, word and action, and then to further evolve to inner beings. Waking up in the middle of the night from this disturbing dream, he had stepped onto his huge balcony of his palace on the North Pole. Irrespectively of all this, he was thinking to give them something for Christmas. But what? They had everything and too much. At that moment he saw countless lights flying in from outer space. They were round see-through Christmas tree ornaments, with inside each one of them a gnome. Then a heavenly music appeared out of nowhere, and on the rhythm of the music these gnomes flying in their spaceships ornaments were flying and dancing in delight. Everywhere on the North Pole elves came out from their homes to enjoy this celestial spectacle. Santa got the message, and some hours later he contacted the gnome elders, who involved a new league of gnomes in finding out what gifts should be given for Christmas. He knew that this would not be easy, and wanted to hear the ideas of his new helpers, who had been informed about every detail regarding Num Planet and its inhabitants. Flying over Gnome Planet, it was beautiful to see their simple, colorful cobblestone dwellings, covered with plants and flowers that blended in with the small trees, and the endless gardens with small streams running in between this magical setting. Santa always used the gnomes as an example of harmonious living and dedicated family life. Their life took place within the parameter of the basic necessities of life, to respect nature and thus not to take more than was needed. Life was simple and healthy. Having a simple strong dwelling, make sure to get some sunshine, fresh water, vital fresh food, eat in peace, work with the earth and do some fun fitness. Care about the body and possessions, be there for each other, and make time to be alone in silence, to thank the giver of all. As he approached the castle of the elders, located between the blue lakes, the reindeer put the sleigh softly down on the ground. Some of the gnome elders were waiting for him, and together they walked to the meeting hall. Santa was welcomed, but noticed that each gnome elder had a young gnome standing next to him. He figured out that each younger gnome represented one of the gnome clans being in charge, helping him with sorting out the choice of this year's presents and assisting him with the delivery. They all sat down on a big round table, and one after the other idea was presented to Santa. He loved the idea of smaller-sized, multi-functioning recycling machines that were replicas of the enormous recycling plants that were used by the younger gnomes on one of the planets that was not inhabited anymore. It was a planet on which the inhabitants didn't survive, but had left a lot of waste behind. Instead of letting all the waste be disintegrated by nature, they had thought to give nature a hand to speed up the process by recycling all the waste and used most of it as fertilizer. They were as well collecting items from homes, businesses and factories that were still in good shape, but more about this was not shared with Santa, as the idea what to do with them was not completed. Endless videos about how to recycle and upcycle were in the making, and they would be Christmas gifts for individuals and families, children, educators, businesses and manufactories. The gnomes were in contact with governments and special individuals that wanted to save the planet. Already established recycling plants and factories, but the details were not worked out yet. Santa saw that the idea, although not knowing all of it, could work, helping to decrease the destruction and pollution. Other teams of young gnomes were busy learning more about the satellites and internet systems on Gnome Planet, and again, other teams busy with other projects that possibly could help the Nubians, their health and the health of the planet. One of the elder gnomes spoke to Santa and asked him if he could lay back and letting them take it from there, and that everything as well would be a Christmas gift for him. This was new to Santa, as he had always been in charge of the organizing and bringing of gifts, but felt the honesty of the gnomes, and although a little hesitant, he accepted that the gnomes would be fully in charge of this year's Christmas. After a nice meal, Santa took leave for the North Pole and was curious what all would happen at Christmas. 2 months before Christmas, the Nubians received the package, and within, made from recycled items, the most beautiful Christmas tree, with the most beautiful see-through ornaments with sceneries of Christmas, and when touched, playing a Christmas song. The ornaments and lights came with a remote control and hand-sized solar panel that was to be placed outside. In addition, the tree ornament system was created in such a way that each year new sceneries and songs would appear in the ornaments, and with the promise that the tree would last for generations to come. The tree was easy to assemble and disassemble and could be stored for the next year. Was it strange, or not strange at all, that the day after they had received the Christmas tree, the news came to their ears that no Christmas trees were allowed to be cut from their roots anymore? Santa on the North Pole, with many elves around them, were having a ball and getting even more curious what would come on Christmas. The morning before Christmas Eve, everybody on the planet woke up and they were shocked to see what was brought to their homes. The gnomes had been very busy. It was difficult to walk around in their homes, as all the home items from that other planet had ended up in their homes. Almost everything was doubled. The walls, overly packed with paintings and endless decorations, were standing on every counter and table space. Their gardens or balconies looked the same, and when they opened their garages, there was no space left to store anything anymore. Space needed to be created, and the Nubians were not too long in the shock and started to sort things out. And within hours they had their new home looked organized. All they didn't want it, they had placed on the sidewalk in front of their homes. Again, strange or not strange at all, the news came to their ears that there would be no more service anymore in regards garbage pickup. One could bring it to special places but had to pay a big price for this, especially items that were difficult to be recycled. Before any complaints or arguments could start, the sound of bells came to their ears, and at that moment, in the stockings above the fireplaces, or slipped underneath through their front door, a letter was delivered, stating not to worry about all the items and future garbage, and that another gift from Santa would be delivered that evening around 10 p.m. The letter also mentioned that in the meantime everybody was invited to go to any market square, park, sport event area or event hall to be part of a special Gnome Christmas celebration, and that this celebration would continue for the next 2 days as well. Most Namibians made their way to one of these areas, and having to walk or drive through streets that looked very messy with all this stuff on the sidewalks. It was definitely something they had to see, and not to their liking, but had to wait until 10 p.m. At the celebration places, which looked cozy as they were decorated in with an old-fashioned look, and of course many big-sized Christmas trees that looked like those the Namibians had standing in their homes. Gnomes were everywhere to be seen, dressed in their beautiful outfits. There were many booths in which gnomes were showing endless ways how to work creatively with recycling items. Namibians were invited to participate and as well in the workshops that were offered. Small bands were playing Christmas songs and marching bands moved in between, and this lasted until 9 p.m. Santa and his elves were watching this all and enjoying every bit of it. At 10 p.m. the doorbells were ringing everywhere, and amphibians going to open the door, seeing lights coming from the sky. Within no time everybody was standing outside to witness the same dance of sound and light what Santa had experienced after his disturbing dream. Slowly it all became more audible and visible, and countless gnomes in their Christmas ornament spaceships were coming closer. Many gnomes were also functioning as reindeer in team format and pulling big-sized sleighs, with on top the small-size multi-functioning recycling machines and delivering them to the amphibians, including an instruction manual and video. After the delivering was done, the sound of dance and light continued, and it was a spectacle to never be forgotten. It became very fast clear that the items on the sidewalk was the first project of learning how to recycle themselves, and of course all the videos how to be creative in recycling or upcycling, and everybody got the idea that there was no way out of it. Plus, there were many opportunities to start new businesses, all created to recycling. Christmas Eve had a new feeling and everybody was busy talking about recycling, the creative ideas, including their garbage to become fertilizer or something to be used for energy. The real surprise came on Christmas morning and was one surprise after the other. Each item in the home, from the furniture to the paint on the wall, when touched, the mobile phone from that Namibian would ring until it was answered. At that moment, a gnome would appear on the screen, explaining the entire history connected to that item, from the moment it came to life in nature to the moment it ended up at that home. The production, the pollution, the advertisements, and go on. One could, or better said, had to listen to, and when not, the phone would lock itself. The phone would lock itself as well when a Namibian didn't want to answer the ringing after touching something. However, connected to each item in the house or new item, one only needed to listen to the story one time only. The same it was with food items when touched with the fingers, fork, spoon or chopsticks. A short story was connected how the life and health of that food item had been compromised and would be affecting the well-being of the body, mind and planet. During 2 nights, no device could be used for any entertainment, and most information during the day and entertainments was an education about how to become a conscious living being. To be aware of each thought, word and action, and what the consequences would be. There was endless information about the basic necessities of life, and to not take anything more than really needed, and definitely not at the cost of other life or adding to the destruction of the planet. This was the pre-programmed Christmas gift for 2 days without any exception. But after the 2 days, each of the Namibians had the choice to stay connected to their personal gnome online and together setting up daily life and denied the restrictions and education. When a Namibian decided to stay connected, the gnome also would make one aware when busy with the prolonging of any sensation and the changing of all the patterns that created numbness. Christmas Day and the day after was about this pre-programmed Christmas gift and visiting the celebration places and learning more about recycling and upcycling. For many Namibians, it was truly a transformation, and which also inspired them to get deeper into their faith. For those who made the choice to stay connected to their personal gnome, the process of becoming a conscious channel being started, and the stage was set for possibly receiving the biggest gift of all, by becoming an inner being connected to an eternal gift within. It would all take time, the letting go, the reprogramming, stopping to react, pausing and thinking before any action, and not falling for any worldly repetition of any kind that would end up in numbness, not taking any more than needed, not taking any life for one's pleasure or palate. Each Namibian that was now in a transition process and doing this with all their heart received another present of having the personal gnome not only available on the phone, but having that gnome sitting on one's shoulder. Before one would proceed with a thought, word or deed, the gnome would ask if this was really necessary, true and kind. Confronted with a challenge, the gnome would whisper in one's ear, "Are you going to accept this or stay in denial?" and seeking to blame, point and complain. Are you going to reflect or just react? Are you going to see this as an opportunity to change things? Depending on the situation, the gnome would whisper and ask if one was connecting to empathy, compassion, forgiveness, selflessness, being humble, loving, caring and serving, or falling in the hands of the negative passions, being the opposite. Each day the gnome would show that individual what it was to be a conscious channel being, a channel of higher principles and virtues, but in all aspects of life. Santa and his elves, constantly observing this all from a distance, witnessed many Namibians changing into conscious channel beings, and could see the old name of Num Planet returning to be Transition Planet again. These had been the qualities of the one to whom Christmas was dedicated to, and why it was celebrated. These were the real gifts of Christmas, and going in one's faith from believing into experiencing these qualities that actually came through one's being and were not even from you, but coming from the divine. Santa left for a short visit to Gnome Planet to thank the Gnome elders, and they talked more about Transition Planet and the channel beings. The purpose of a channel being on Transition Planet was about being or becoming a conscious channel being, and to continue the transition to become, or better said, being an inner channel and receiving the eternal gift. Each individual actively involved in their transition process needed to re-establish their connection with the divine and taking their faith to another level of walking and living the path, and just being a channel for him. This would be a love coming from him through the channel being, and only that would resolve the feeling of missing something within oneself, because only that would take the self-created self out of the way. In real love, one must lose oneself in the beloved. What the story could bring us. Having become a consumer society, and in the process consuming our own health and the health of the planet, it is maybe time to stop all this producing and consuming by looking what we really need, the basic necessities, and that is simple. We can assist as much as well in recycling that will decrease when we are in the process of becoming human beings instead of human reactive doers and consumers. Living with higher principles and higher virtues will make this work, because we need to check every thought, word and possible action before we continue with them. The question needs to be there as to how this thought, word or action is going to affect me, others and the world. Our faith and path that we are involved with needs to be reflected in all these possible actions and will assist us to become and stay human beings, and which is the step to self-consciousness, and then to proceed to losing ourselves into his consciousness.